Hello and welcome to Indus News with me, Osman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's in Pakistan, where Prime Minister Imran Khan says Indian troops are terrorizing the population of occupied Kashmir. He was addressing a dialogue on peace and development in South Asia, and Khan said Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a mistake by stripping the region of its autonomy. Prime Minister Khan said Kashmiris have been deprived of civil liberties in the occupied valley. He said India is being ruled by a racist ideology based on hatred against minorities. Khan went on to say that Pakistan wants to facilitate the peace process in Afghanistan and said Pakistan faces a lot of problems today because of the Afghan war. Well, staying with Pakistan, and they said they will abide by the International Court of Justice decision on captured Indian spy Commander Kulbhushan Jadhav. Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammad Faisal said this during a press briefing in Islamabad.
Mohammad Faisal said Islamabad has rejected reports about an amendment to Pakistan's Army Act that would enable Jadhav to appeal his death sentence to a civilian court. He said the Indian Supreme Court's controversial decision in the Ayodhya case has jeopardized the security of mosques across India. Faisal pointed out that Muslims have used Babri Mosque as a place of worship for centuries. He said the decision failed to uphold the demands of justice and shredded the veneer of so-called secularism in India. Faisal said the Indian Supreme Court ruling has illustrated the vulnerabilities of minorities in India, particularly Muslims. He drew the attention of the international community to India's brutal suppression of the religious rights and freedoms of the Kashmiri people. Faisal said Pakistan unequivocally condemns the killings of Palestinians by Israeli forces.
Israel and Gaza have reached an Egypt-brokered ceasefire to end 2 days of heavy fighting that killed 34 Palestinians. The Al-Quds Brigade spokesman Musab al-Barim said the truce is based on a list of demands presented by his group. Al-Barim said Israel must also stop hostilities and ensure a ceasefire during Palestinian demonstrations. Israel's military says its raids targeted Palestine's Al-Quds Brigade. US President Donald Trump has asked his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan to walk away from the purchase of the Russian S-400 missile system. He was speaking at a White House joint press conference where Trump called the purchase a serious challenge to bilateral ties. More in this report.
Amid tensions over Turkey's military operation in Syria and its acquisition of S-400, the President of the United States and Turkey met at the White House. President Erdogan said the two countries could only overcome the dispute through dialogue. Trump hopes the two countries would resolve differences soon.
Turkey's acquisition of sophisticated Russian military equipment such as the S-400 creates some very serious challenges for us, and we are talking about it constantly. We talked about it today. We're talking about it in the future. Hopefully we'll be able to resolve that situation.
On Turkey's operation in northeastern Syria, Erdogan said Ankara is fighting Kurdish terrorists, not civilians.
First, we have to make a distinction between two things. We have no problems with the Kurds. We have problems with terrorist organizations. Some terrorists coming out of the Kurds. Which are they? What are they? The Democratic Union Party and the People's Protection Units, which are offshoots of the terrorist organizations, the PKK, also known as the Kurdistan Workers' Party.
After a friendly press conference, the White House issued a statement using much firmer language. It said Turkey must abandon its purchase of the Russian S-400 air defense system if it wants to strengthen the partnership with the US.
8 Kurdish militants have been killed in Turkish airstrikes in northern Iraq. In a statement, Turkey's defense ministry said the operation in the Matina region was conducted on the basis of intelligence reports. Over 400 Kurdish fighters have been killed in the operations in northern Iraq since May. The PKK has been designated as a terrorist organization by Turkey, the US and the EU. Turkey says the group is responsible for killing more than 40,000 people over the last 30 years. Well, we've got some news coming in now in Iraq, where 4 more people have been killed and 35 others wounded in fresh clashes between police and protesters in Baghdad. Witnesses say security forces fired tear gas to disperse demonstrators in Baghdad's Kolani Square. More than 300 people have been killed since the protests against corruption and unemployment began on the 1st of October. And Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi's government has ordered electoral and constitutional reforms to stop the unrest, but he's refused to step down. Now on to Iran, where its president says the US intentionally stirs up tension and conflict in the Middle East. President Hassan Rouhani was speaking at the 33rd International Islamic Unity Conference in Tehran. He said this year's event will focus on Palestine and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He said senior Islamic scholars at the conference will not allow the Palestine issue to be forgotten. Iran's state media says over 350 leading clerics from 39 countries are attending the conference. The Secretary General of the World Islamic Schools of Thought Forum, Ayatollah Mohsen Araki, and 250 Iranian Sunni clerics are also there. China's President Xi Jinping says protectionism and unilateralism have damaged international trade and caused a global economic slowdown. He was speaking at the closing ceremony of the BRICS Business Forum in Brasilia. President Xi repeated China's support for free trade and multilateralism. Leaders of the world's 5 largest emerging economies have criticized what they call politically motivated protectionism. President Xi urged BRICS countries to boost growth and find innovative ways to deal with existing challenges.
Amongst all BRICS countries, when companies are confident, then the market will be vibrant. And I hope you will seize on the opportunity and mobilize more resources from the business community and actively invest and do more business in BRICS countries, including in the joint implementation of large projects that have economic and social impact, and which therefore have a major impact on economic development and job creation.
In the United States, 2 senior U.S. diplomats have said President Donald Trump directly asked about a Ukrainian investigation into his Democratic rival Joe Biden. Talking to reporters in Washington, Trump said he didn't recall making such comments. At the first public hearing of the congressional impeachment inquiry, acting ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, said Trump was preoccupied with investigating Joe Biden.
Member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward.
Well, in Sri Lanka, an intense 6-week campaign for presidential elections on the 16th of November has come to an end. The 2 frontrunners in Saturday's vote, Sajith Premadasa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa, have held their final rallies in Colombo. More in this report.
Posters and leaflets jostle for attention on Sri Lanka's street walls. There is an election to fight and the end is in sight. Meanwhile, police have stepped up security across the country to head off the chance of violence on election day. 16 million Sri Lankans will cast a vote to choose a winner from 35 candidates. The main opposition candidate, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, is the brother of ex-strongman President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
I promise you all the programs in my manifesto will be carried out during my term. We will pay special attention to the national security of this country.
The ruling party candidate Sajith Premadasa is the son of the assassinated president Rana Singhe Premadasa, who was targeted by a suicide bomber in 1993.
We will further strengthen the anti-poverty program and then reintroduce my father's Janasaviya's anti-poverty program. We will provide assistance from both these programs and eradicate poverty in a short time.
This year, the country has been rocked by coordinated extremist bombings on Easter Sunday attacks, which killed 269 people. However, a private poll monitor says this year's elections will be peaceful compared to the 2015 event.
Now in Russia, 2 students have been killed and 3 others wounded in a shooting at a college in Blagoveshchensk city. Police say a 19-year-old shooter brought a hunting rifle to the class and opened fire on its fellow students. It isn't immediately clear what prompted the attack. The attacker shot himself soon after the police arrived. The college was evacuated and classes suspended after the attack. In Egypt, 7 people have been killed and 16 others injured in a fire caused by an oil pipeline leak in Beria province. The health ministry says the injured are being treated for burns. The Ministry of Petroleum says the leak was caused by a failed attempt at theft, which left a hole in the pipeline leading to an oil spill. Petroleum Pipelines Company Chief Abdelmonem Hafez said the robbery attempt took place in the city of Itay al-Barud in the Beria governorate. He said the technical teams have arrived at the scene and are working to plug the leak. 7 people have been killed and 16 injured after 2 passenger buses collided in Indonesia. The tragedy struck shortly after midnight on a route in West Java that connects to the capital, Jakarta. Police say 1 bus driver lost control and collided with the other bus, instantly killing all 7 people on board. The driver who lost control of the bus was injured, but none of his passengers were hurt. The cause of the accident is under investigation. Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Welcome back. Now it's been around a month since protests erupted in Chile and they are showing no signs of abating. This despite the local police's use of brutal tactics to intimidate demonstrators, including firing pellet guns which blind people. The use of these so-called less lethal weapons first arose in occupied Kashmir, where they've robbed thousands of people of their eyesight. More in this report. Chileans have continued to protest against government corruption for weeks. This is despite a brutal crackdown by local police, which is using inhumane measures against them. This includes the use of pellet guns, which can leave people permanently blind. One doctor says this is the first time he's seen these kinds of injuries.
The number of blindness cases here is tragically high. Much more than other conflict zones like Hong Kong or the Yellow West in Paris or Spain or the Palestine.
The Chilean police has also fired live rounds at demonstrators multiple times since the protests started. Despite the threat of being killed or left blind, people say they will continue to come out on the streets.
The truth is, I have more anger than fear. More hate than grief, and it is against those people who are out there shooting, mutilating people, torturing them.
The Chilean police's tactics are not new. In occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Indian occupying forces have been shooting Kashmiris with pellet guns since 2010. It can be argued that if the international community had taken strong action against the practice in occupied Kashmir, this crowd control technique would not be used against Chileans today. Now in business news, the Pakistan Stock Exchange has emerged as the world's best performing financial market since October the 1st, after gaining more than 14% in just 6 weeks. According to Bloomberg's World Equity Index rankings, the KSE 100 index has been among the 6 best performing markets since July, providing returns on investment of over 8%. The rising trend of the KSE 100 has coincided with Pakistan's introduction of economic reforms to reduce its fiscal and balance of trade deficits. Last week, an International Monetary Fund mission said Pakistan's policies have started to bear fruit and restore economic stability. Well, for more on this story, we're joined from Stockholm by Matthias Martinsson, who's the Chief Investment Officer of Tundra Fonda, a specialist frontier markets fund manager. Matthias, welcome to Indus News. So what's making Pakistan such an attractive prospect for international investors?
Well, I think first of all, Pakistan shares the traditional characteristics of many young emerging markets. You have a large and young population. You have an economy that is yet very undeveloped. But the reason why we were always more intrigued by Pakistan was that you actually have a relatively well-developed equity market. You have many companies being around for 50 to 60 years. And the corporate quality in Pakistan is far better than what one would expect for a market that is so undeveloped. As I sometimes explain, is that imagine the growth potential of Africa, but with financial infrastructure. The second reason why I think Pakistan was kind of more attractive than many other emerging markets is what we call the perception arbitrage, that investors' perception of the market is far more negative than the realities on the ground.
Matthias, do you expect the Pakistani authorities to introduce stimulus measures to try to boost economic growth in the country?
My impression is that they will be very careful of being too early in the stimulus. So we right now expect that they will lower the discount rate only in March 2020, possibly as early as January. So unless something unexpected happens, that is our expectations.
So will these positive changes on Pakistan's stock market continue, or will Pakistan's equity market over the next few years? What is the outlook for these, Matthias?
We passed the bottom in early August. We're not going to revisit that. Our impression is that the companies now, although they're still in pain, that they've seen the worst and that they see slight gradual improvements from here. And that's what I think you've seen in the equity market also recently. If we look in valuation terms, that the market needs to rise about 40% to reach its average price to book valuations of the last 10 years. So I think kind of that is the first target. But if we look from historic truths, from 1999 and 2010, the market performed more than 25% a year in US dollar terms. So I think there's reason to be optimistic. What one should keep in mind is that the pace of the rise this time around will be slower.
Matthias, thank you. That was Matthias Martinsson, the Chief Investment Officer of Tundra Fonda there. Now, India's inflation rate has hit a 16-month high, hot on the heels of a slowdown in economic growth. Data released by India Ratings and Research show that the retail inflation breached the medium-term target of 4% set by the central bank. And this is the first time this has happened since July 2018.
The sharp upstick in consumer inflation dampened expectations of a big cut in interest rates by the Reserve Bank of India next month. IRR chief economist says growth concerns will dominate the central bank's monetary policy review and could still prompt a rate cut in December. Earlier this week, the RBI reported that India's factory output contracted by over 4% in September to the lowest rate in 8 years. The central bank has downgraded its GDP growth forecast for 2020 to about 6% from its previous estimate of nearly 7%.
Now we look at the stock markets, and in Europe they're trading lower after US President Donald Trump reiterated his tough stance on trade talks with China. Escalating political unrest in Hong Kong is also weighing on investors' confidence. Frankfurt's DAX has lost 0.25% despite gains by index heavyweights Bechtle and Deutsche Wohnen. London's FTSE 100 index has also dropped a fraction amid a decline by banking and other trade-sensitive stocks. The CAC 40 index in Paris is marginally higher. Earlier, the Hang Seng index led losses in Asia, closing down nearly 2% lower as Hong Kong encountered the worst violence in weeks. Tokyo's Nikkei 225, the Kospi in Seoul, and Sydney's ASX 200 all lost nearly 1%. Well, it's 22 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore, but don't forget, for the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Bye-bye.